Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm very happy to be here. I'm honored to be here in Portugal, this beautiful city, by the way. So if they want to have more conferences here, I'm coming. So my goal in life, my passion now, is to change the education system, not just here, but it's worldwide. We all have the same problems. It's not like it's just isolated in Portugal or the United States or France or anywhere, because our system is based on something that was created 100 years ago. As a matter of fact, most of the schools have chairs that can't move. So they force you to keep the kids stuck in rows. Anyway, my solution, you're probably going to wonder, like, what's this 20% time stuff? That's my solution. Hopefully you'll understand at the end of the presentation, like, why 20% time. So I'm going to start out with a little bit of background, and I want to see how many people know who this is. You raise your hand if you know who this is. So, nobody. Maybe 3 people. Okay, so this is my first daughter. She was my #1 experiment. You know, when you first have children, you know how to do it. Well, I didn't know how to do anything, and she was it. Poor thing. Anyway, she turned out, I decided I was going to try to empower her as best I could, give her as many skills as I possibly could early on. I'll tell you who she is today. She's the CEO of YouTube. So I've succeeded in giving her a few skills. And so this is part of what this whole talk is about, is like how to give skills to kids, your children, and also for teachers, how to do it in schools, and how to do it in industry. So this is my second daughter, Janet. She's a professor of medicine at UCSF, Medical School in San Francisco, and she's concerned about the obesity epidemic worldwide. And so her goal is also to make a big impact on the world. And my third daughter is Anne, who's the founder of 23andMe. How many people have heard of 23andMe? It's the genetics company that, personal genetics, that tells you about your own predisposition to disease, as well as where your ancestors came from. It's pretty revolutionary, and she had to break all sorts of boundaries to get it to go in the United States. It's actually not available yet here in Portugal, and it's because it's so revolutionary. You don't have to go to the doctor to get this test. You can just do it your own self. And so usually the doctors are concerned. So just giving you an idea, this is the background of what I've done. So this is what I did with my daughters. Now you're going to hear what I've done with school. I've been teaching for 36 years. I'm still teaching. Can you believe that? In the classroom. And so I'm imagining a better future. I am empowering kids with tech. How do we empower them with tech? And it isn't just giving them a computer and just saying, well, you do it. I wrote a book called Moonshots in Education. It's available in English and in Spanish, and next year will be available in Portuguese, I'm happy to say. So hopefully for Portugal and for Brazil. And the book is based on Kennedy. You saw Kennedy earlier today. Kennedy's talk, 1961, in which he said, moonshot. We need a moonshot. The world needs a moonshot, not because it's easy, but because it's hard and because it's one we cannot afford to postpone. We need to do it in education. We need to do it now in education, not later. It's really important. So it means changing the way we think of learning in the digital age. So I am sure 100% of you, the way you were educated is in a typical classroom where the teacher was in total control and you raised your hand to speak and you took a test on the material that was delivered by the teacher. I want to know, for example, right now, how many of you go to the library these days? Raise your hand if you go to the library. Okay, there's about 6. The majority of people, if you want to get information, or if you want to read a book, most people don't go to the library. They do it on that little device in their pocket. whenever you want to know something, you use your cell phone. So if you think going to the moon was hard, try changing the culture of teaching. Impossible. It's so hard. Well, it's not totally impossible, at least I hope it's not, but it's really, really tough. So why do we need to change? Here, look at this. They start early. Whenever anybody wants, keep their kid quiet next, whatever, excited, you're in a restaurant, whatever, wherever you are, hand them an iPhone, hand them an iPad. They grow up with digital tools. So we need to change the mindset of the teacher, the mindset. Carol Dweck, they talked about Carol Dweck earlier today. I think Jeff talked about her. It's the mindset. What you think you can do is what you're going to do. If we can change the mindset of the teacher from the sage on the stage to the guide on the side, that's going to make a huge difference. But it sounds like it's simple, but as I said, it's really tough to do. So in the 20th century, that was like just not too long ago, right? 18 years ago, the #1 focus was memorization. As a matter of fact, when I went to school, the #1 thing you wanted to do was be a human computer. You wanted to regurgitate facts as quickly as you could. Everybody was doing that. You know, the more human computer-like you were, the better you were. The question is do we need memorization the same way? We still need to memorize a little bit, but we don't have to memorize to the same degree. Do students understand the material, or do they just memorize it? Forget it. Here's the facts. Look at what some famous people said. Ben Franklin, tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, involve me and I learn. Very important to remember that. Involve me and I learn. Churchill said, I'm always ready to learn, although I do not always like to be taught. Most people don't like to be lectured to, unfortunately. That's just the way it is. This is what famous Harvard professor Eric Mazur found after doing all this research. Test taking promotes memorization, not learning, not thinking. Just look at the statistics. 10% is what students remember after a year. If you just ask yourself, I wonder how many of you can remember the name of the courses you took in high school, let alone what you learned. So there's an inverse relationship between grade point average and innovation orientation. This guy, Laszlo Bock, Senior Vice President of People Operations at Google, said, one of the things we've seen from all our data crunching is that GPAs are worthless as a criteria for hiring. We found they don't predict anything. So did you know, I don't know if you know, that Google now no longer requires a college degree to be hired. They will hire you just based on your skill set. There's an inverse relationship between grade point average and innovative orientation. The more students focus on the test scores, the less creative they become. That is a really important thing. The more they follow direction, the less creative they are. So the people with the highest GPA are the ones who know how to follow direction the best, but they are not creative. They are not the ones that we need for the 21st century. So how to change the system? Turns out you parents are the key, because you control all the politicians. You vote. The policymakers need to get this information, and then you need to make sure that they get it. But the teacher is also the key, but the teacher alone can't do it because the teacher is getting direction from the school board, getting direction from the state. The state tells the teacher what to teach. I, as a teacher, I can tell you, if I go in and start teaching whatever I want to teach instead of what the state teacher tells me to teach, usually what they do is fire me. So it's not so easy. Here, this is something great for Portugal, though. Portuguese teachers earn more than other higher education workers. Portugal's doing quite a few things right, actually. Check this. Average Portuguese 15-year-old student scored higher than the average on the PISA test. The PISA test is the test that compares one country to another. So they scored better or equal to Norway, Poland, Denmark, Belgium. Do you know where the United States is? Number 33. Pretty poor. But we don't do such a great job, unfortunately. Portugal's on track for another good year. That's according to government. So things are going pretty well. I'm trying to be optimistic here. However, there's a skills shortage that's hampering the economy. The skills shortage are these technical skills that kids need to have in order to be able to fill those jobs that are needed. Automation threatens 800 million jobs, but technology can save us. I think they talked about that earlier on in the early presentation. So why should we change an education system that has been ranked as top quality? It's pretty good actually here. Look at the Finnish education system. It's the #1 in the world, and they are getting ready to change it. Look at what they say. Only dead fish follow the stream. Yeah. Finland has decided to go against the tide of global education reform movements, which is based on core subjects, competition, standardization, test-based accountability, and control. Very important to remember this. They're going against it. #1 scoring country in the world. They're not going to be doing this anymore. This is what we're all preparing our kids for, the PISA test. The PISA test is the Personal International Student Assessment Test that compares one country to another. This is what we're training our students to do. Listen carefully and follow directions. This is what employers get. We all get them. We're still teaching for the last century. So this is the lecture-based model based on from 100 years ago. By the way, this is an ad for the whiteboards. They're trying to sell these whiteboards. University lectures are ineffective. Ineffective. This is what we do in lectures. We need to train students for a very different world. So this is the changing role. School as a learning community. So that's what Singularity is. Singularity is a learning community. School is a learning community. Changing role of the student. We're working together. World of change. Changing role of the teacher. Changing concept of learning and competence. Learning doesn't stop when you are done with your high school, just like they showed in the chart this morning. That's the beginning of self-learning. And kids need to know about that. So what should we be teaching for the 21st century? #1, collaboration. How well can you collaborate if you sit in rows and not allowed to talk? Nope. How about critical thinking? You can't do critical thinking unless you actually practice it. Just reading a book about it is hard to learn to think critically. How about communication skills? So today in the morning, they had us stand up and talk to each other for just a minute. Your typical student spends 7 hours a day, 7 hours a day, listening to teachers talk. So they need to do something else besides just sit there in class and listen to teachers talk. You want to learn communication skills? Go to practice. And creativity. So those are the 4 main things that they need to learn to do in order to be able to be effective people for the 21st century. Big 4, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, and communication. Going to remember that. Those are the main 4 things you need to remember. So the secret behind my classroom, and I'm going to tell you a lot about my classroom, is this thing called TRIC. And I put it in this little acronym. This is English. Hopefully you'll be able to remember. But TRIC stands for trust, respect, independence, collaboration, and kindness. So just think back to the classroom that you were in and ask yourself, how much trust did the teacher have of me? I would guess not very much. All 3 of my daughters went to school in France. I can tell you, they don't trust the students in France at all, as far as I can see. And we don't trust them in America. If you want to go to the bathroom, you have to raise your hand, ask for a pass, go to the bathroom, and then they like, oh, it took you 10 minutes? Why that? You know,
So there's no trust. There's very little respect for student ideas. We don't promote independence, follow the instructions, collaboration, missing. Up till 6 years ago, Harvard University used to give people a failing grade if they discovered that they were collaborating out of class on their homework. That was 6 years ago. I'm sure that things are pretty similar here. And kindness, it's kind of most kids say there's none. So I wrote this book that's coming out next May. And it's called How to Raise Successful People, Simple Lessons for Radical Results. And the book is organized around that acronym. So that acronym is important not just in schools, not just at home, but in industry as well. Just think about whether this exists in the workplace. So learning has changed.
Per day worldwide.
This is how we learn today.
And it's like if you want to know how to change the filter on your refrigerator,
site in the world.
You go to YouTube. You know, if you want to know how to do something in your car, you go to YouTube. Everybody finds all the information on YouTube. We also have, we talked about Udacity with Sebastian Thrun. Udacity, you want to learn how to program? It's like Udacity. Coursera, free classes online. edX or Khan Academy, they're all online.
Everybody finds all the information on YouTube.
So what kind of education promotes passion for learning? We talked about passion. People need to have passion in order to be happy in life. They need to care about something. Passion comes when the student is in control. So that's one of the main blocks to giving changing the classroom, changing the structure of the classroom. The teacher has to give up some control. And that's where the 20% time comes. The idea is give up some control for 20% of the time. Why did I say that 20% of the time? Because I realize being in education, we can't ever tell them to give up control 100% of the time. It's never going to work. And education hasn't changed. So how about just changing 20% of the time? Let students innovate, let them create, let them work on something 20% of the time, specifically project-based learning. Work on a project, when you work on a project together, you work collaboratively, you have to be creative, you communicate, it's the key. So I'll give you some ideas for some of the project-based learning. The 20% time is just a way to get your foot in the door. The students should do projects they control for 20% of the time. The professor is the coach. And that can happen easily here. As a matter of fact, there are programs right here in Portugal during the summer. They bring in kids and have them work collaboratively on projects for doing exactly what I would suggest. But the question is, how many kids get to go? Who gets to go? It's just the kids from the best schools, the kids who have the parents who pay attention, the kids who have the money to be able to do it. I'm trying to talk about all kids, lower class kids, kids from developing countries. I mean, we just heard about how poverty is going to get worse in Africa. This system works in Africa, giving kids control, letting them take more charge of the classroom.
I'm trying to talk about all
we change only 20% of the curriculum, use real-world projects. And I'm going to give you an example of one that I've done.
How poverty is going to get worse.
But we'll come at the end of this. The real-world projects can involve science. Science is a real-world project. Tech is real-world. Engineering, of course, and math. And here's the last one. I've added an extra M onto STEM for media. And this is what I'm doing in media, and this is why I think it's important. Media is very important today. So I teach at Palo Alto High high school and I use media. I also use this adaptive learning. I bet most people don't know what adaptive learning is, but I'll tell you what it is. They use AI in it. AI, basically, you put in an answer to the computer, and the computer responds to you. And if you get it right, you move to the next thing. If you get it wrong, the computer gives you the question again in a different format. So AI helps the teacher free up time so that they can do more projects in class. And this is the kind of stuff that every brain is slightly different, so it promotes equality in learning. Let's say somebody learned something and they have to repeat 3 times or 4 times. And then somebody does it just 1 time. Adaptive learning helps you do that. So there's it customized to fit all learning levels. I don't know, how many of you heard of adaptive learning before this? 1, 2. Well, now you all should know what adaptive learning is. Hopefully it will make a difference. So it supports student growth, basically, and it makes things just easier for the teacher. So journalism, I personally think journalism is the easiest real-world project, but that's probably because I'm a journalist. But I think today, everybody's a journalist. Did you know that? Because everybody is tweeting. Everybody is online doing something. Everybody's posting. So we're all amateur journalists. So this is what journalism teaches kids, and this is why I think it's important. Purpose, autonomy, and mastery. Daniel Pink wrote this book, Drive. It is a great book, and it explains the reasoning here. Journalism prepares students for a world we cannot predict. We can't. We're a world dominated by social media, artificial intelligence, climate change, flat world competition. Journalism prepares kids for all of this. It integrates the curriculum because you have to use language skills, history skills, social studies skills, math skills. You need all these skills to do journalism. So this is I'm sort of constantly giving you these reasons why, or continuously. Primary research that involves critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, communication, that involves all these skills. So for 30 years, I was in a portable with my program. And I don't know if you know what a portable here in Portugal is, but a portable is a trailer. Schools in the United States, when they have too many students, they bring in trailers. They're already pre-set up, and then the teacher and the students go in there, and then that's a trailer. So it's hardly a very good classroom. And as my program grew, they just added more trailers. So I had like 1 trailer, another trailer, and another trailer. So today, because of the size of the program, they built this building for the program. This is the Media Arts Center at Palo Alto High School. This is a public high school. It's a 25,000 square foot high school, 25,000 square foot Media Arts Center. The high school has 2,000 students. So it's just a public school, Palo Alto. Today we have about 700 students that take journalism. It's the largest program in the United States. 12 publications, newspapers, magazines, websites, TV, radio. We make movies, do graphic design. We have 6 additional media arts teachers. Any school in the country can do the same thing, any school in the world can do this. You'll see the kind of work that they do. A typical classroom, in my opinion, should look more like this. It should have computers and kids working, at least 20% of the time. Maybe in my class it's more, it's like 70% of the time, but let's just say it should be at least like that. By the way, the class sizes can increase because the kids work together peer to peer. So that doesn't have to have the teacher always teaching the kids. They teach each other. Here's a picture of what the class looks like, or just part of the class. You can't see them all here because this class has 60 students in it. So the ratio is 1 teacher to 60 students. How does that work? Because they work in groups. Here's other pictures of them in class. You can see me there in the back. I kind of float around in the class. This is what the facility looks like. Notice everything is movable, so that it can move when you need it to move. Here's another picture of what class looks like. More pictures. You don't see the teacher anywhere, but now you do see the teacher. Okay, notice no one is paying attention to the teacher. So the goal is to have the kids be in control. I talked earlier about the importance of control. They are in control in this class. And again, they're working together in groups, constantly. So how do I evaluate this, and what does the student work look like? By the way, I don't test. Why don't I test? Because every 2 to 3 weeks, something like this comes out. It is 3 sections, 24 to 28 pages, the size of the New York Times, all produced by 15 to 18-year-olds. How can they do it? Why are they interested in doing it? They are in control. All the articles are their ideas. All the pictures are their ideas. Everything in the entire publication belongs to them. When they're in charge of it, they want to do it. They become passionate about it. This is a spreadsheet, it's called a spotlight in the middle. Here's another one. These are all created and done by kids. They learn all the Adobe tools, InDesign, Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere. They learn it all by doing it. And here's another magazine. This is just one of the magazines that comes out every 6 weeks. This magazine has about 60 pages in it. All the designs are done by kids. It looks like it's not, but it is, all kids. This is a website. This is more publications. We have to have so many publications because we have so many kids, right? If you don't keep them busy, then there's a problem. This is a sports magazine. This is, again, this Verde magazine. Remember in the United States we had that mass shooting in Parkland in Florida? So my students, or the students in the program, did this publication, and there you see a bullet hole through the magazine there. It went through the entire magazine. So it was dramatic. So they comment on things that they care about. This is a science magazine, a travel magazine. This is foreign affairs magazine. All these are their ideas. It's not my ideas. This is a photography magazine. This is television. We do television every day. They do a weather report, which is actually pretty funny because you can imagine everybody already knows what the weather is by the time they're doing the report. Okay, so I gave them all the control that possible, and they still win, top of the nation. We've won more Gold Crown Awards from Columbia than any other school in the country. Who pays for it? Self-supporting. The students get advertising. They go out, they make the advertising, they get the advertising, they learn entrepreneurial skills. The peer pressure keeps them motivated. Because everybody's like, how do you make them do it? Well, they want to do it because they own the project, they're working with their friends, the school pays the bill for the lights in the room and so forth, and the computers and all the paper and supplies, and then they want to be there. So how do they actually do it? Google Docs. Hopefully you used Google Docs because you can then edit each other's stuff. So I, the teacher, I get to watch while they edit each other's things. use Google Groups for communication. We also use Facebook. So, and we use Sheets for managing the publication. They did it. They do it all. So why am I going through all this then? This is how you teach kids those 4 basic C's. They have to communicate, they have to collaborate, they have to be creative when they're doing it, and they have to think critically. And they're doing it. That's where they learn these skills. So most students don't know what fake news is. Stanford study shows. But journalism students can spot it because they know what it takes to write a story. They know what it is, what a good story is. They know what sources are. They know how to look up from different websites. It's not that they can do it 100%, because as you saw from that Obama thing, which was kind of scary, I'm sure they can't figure it all out, but they've got a head start on other kids. So I'm now going to give you like a few of the graduates from Palo Alto High School, so they don't necessarily go into journalism. They can go into lots of other things. The goal is to empower them, to give them a mindset so that they can do whatever it is they need to do, or whatever they're passionate about. So here's one of my former students. He is a basketball player. I don't know if any of you know basketball, but he worked for, he was a basketball player for the Knicks in New York when he first started, and it was something called Linsanity, because he was, I guess he did so much in the way of scoring that they said it was Jeremy Linsanity. Here's another one of my former students, Lisa Brennan Jobs. She just wrote this book, Small Fry, and so I knew her dad, and I'm sure all of you know her dad too, at least to some degree. Here's another student, he's an author. He just wrote this book, The Winter Soldier. So they do things that they care about. He's the economist for media, economist reporter for media. Brian Wong is the vice president of Alibaba Group. Actually, there are 2 or 3 people in Alibaba at the very top who are all former students, and that's what he wanted to do, go to China. He was born in the United States. She's a journalist for Recode, which is an online magazine. I don't know if you know about it. It's a great one. Noah Snyder, also an economist reporter for Russia. And here's my most famous student, James Franco. He acted in all these movies. And what he said, I think, is what all students should have. His dad was a mathematician, and guess what he wanted James to be? Yeah, right. Anyway, James wanted to be an actor, which was not well received by the family. This is what he said. He wrote the introduction to my book, MOONSHOTS in Education. She showed me I could take my dreams as seriously as I wanted. All students should have somebody that believes in them. It makes a huge difference in their lives. So every student needs a champion. We need to empower them. Every student needs a faculty friend. So what can you do now? You, here, you're the leaders here, Portugal. One thing you can do is promote 20% time in all the schools. Talk to people. You know, you don't get this idea, out of the clear blue. And let kids work on projects together that they care about, that they come up with themselves. So we can support policies that empower students. And instead of keeping them lined up in rows, we can empower them. So this cartoon pretty much says it all. It's always sit, stay, heal. Never think, innovate, be yourself. So if you remember anything, you need to remember this is, we don't want our kids to be in the sit, stay, heal. We want them to think for themselves, whether they're your children, your personal children, or in school. And then there's this video. I thought you could see what it really looks like in my classes. That is, if we can get this video to play. I don't know. Oh, here it is. So be prepared for chaos. This is what it really looks like. And they're going to show you how they put the paper together. So what? See, this is the spotlight page. Notice they're really paying attention there. I have exercises in case they get antsy.
Let's not make this an entertaining video. I feel like.
Hey, where's my squad meeting?
So at the end of this, you'll see finished pages. But that's basically how they do it, using InDesign and Photoshop and Illustrator. They're all screenshots of what the work that goes into it. So you too can do it here in Portugal, 20% of the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Esther. And thank you, folks. We actually have a ton of questions from you all. So, Esther, would you be ready to do kind of a lightning round and see how many we can get through?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Okay, great. So I want to start off with something you introduced towards the end of the presentation. You talked about supporting the right policies. And there's a question here that I think is a very good one. It says, we hear about the need for the change of education already for some time, but the system is deeply rooted in legislature. And legislature always falls behind. How can we deal with this? How do you see the future of legislature regarding education, and what can we do to change it?
So the legislature is composed of leaders, people like you, who are not educated as to the importance of making these changes. So you can do all kinds of organizing your community, organizing your friends, and actually have some kind of a meeting with them where you talk about the importance to Portugal of making these kinds of changes. You're welcome to show these videos or this presentation that I have, or I have a lot of other videos also. But, I mean, if you want to be ahead of the game here, these kids need the skills. Otherwise, they're going to get behind. And it doesn't cost more to move it to 20% time. It's exactly the same budget. You're just reapportioning what you're doing in that time. So, does that make sense, just to put political pressure on them?
Yeah, and I think if we're kind of imagining the system that supports, determines, and designs education, and we have what's going on in the classroom, we have what's going on at the policy and legislature level, the other piece, of course, is what happens in the home. And a participant has said, from the beginning of your presentation, we learned that your daughters are very successful people.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It seems that besides teaching in the classroom, you also excel in educating in the family environment. And so the question is, how do you think about the role of parenting and the relationship between the home and the classroom?
That's a great question. And there's a huge relationship between the home and the classroom. And parenting, one thing that parents need to know that I talk about in this book that I just wrote, is that parents are the child's first teacher. And if you don't think of yourself as a teacher, you have to rethink that because they are copying you. And the way you set their behavior in the beginning, the first 5 years, makes a huge difference. And that's what I talk about in the new book I have, How to Raise Successful People. Because if you do too much for them, I call it the snowplow parent. They clear the way. So the child never fails, never has an opportunity to make a mistake, never falls. You know, if the child falls, it's like, oh my God, well, at least in the United States, that's what happens. So it's helicopter parents. Too much over-care create a lot of problems for your child later on, because then when you're not there, how do they feel? They're unused to making any mistake. And those kids that are like rebellious, encourage it. And I actually encouraged a lot of that behavior in those rebellious daughters of mine. The stories will be in that book.
Two related questions, and picking up on the theme of the book and even the title. So the book is about raising successful people. That's the title, How to Raise Successful People.
Right.
So how do you define success? What do you think success looks like in the 21st century?
Well, for me, number one success is a person who is passionate about the work they're doing in the world, and that work somehow has a positive impact on our world. Because just as they showed in that slide this morning, if you have millions of dollars lined up and just sitting there, if you have a lot of money, and then you don't have passion in life, and you don't have something that you really care about, you're not going to be happy. You need to have something you care about that you want to do. And I see a lot of people in Silicon Valley that have a lot of money that are, I'm sorry to say, not too happy. Yeah.
So as we're thinking about a world where information is increasingly abundant and the content is available, it seems that in education, the real place for innovation is on the experience and on the social aspect of learning. And listening to you speak and watching your videos, it's clear that you act as an incredible coach for your students and in the classroom. And I'd like to close on that note. How do you think about motivating students and motivating learners, especially as we're making more learning experiences available online?
Well, first of all, I like what you said about it's a relationship with teachers, parents. So learning, classroom, it's a relationship. It's a relationship between the teacher and the student. It really is. You want to foster relationships between the students, but then that student also has to feel like they can come to you no matter what, that you will support them. Because learning is making mistakes. And kids are afraid to admit they made a mistake for fear that the teacher will think badly about them or give them a bad grade. So it's important to develop a sense of community in the classroom, a sense of caring. And I've had students that have done really poorly, and they're shocked when I say I forgive them. And it's like, oh, we'll just throw those grades out and you can start again. Can you imagine how great that is for them? To feel that like you're on their side, working to help them. I mean, that's what school should be, shouldn't it? The teacher is the person there to help you learn. And so with all the online stuff that we're talking about, because there's a lot of online stuff, you can support that learning online by letting the kids work together and letting friends work together. You know, if they want to do gaming online or they like to play games, I would teach them to code games. You know, let them do other things together. All learning is relationships. I mean, that's what life's all about, right? Isn't it? Relationships. So that's what I would like to suggest for everybody.
I think that's a wonderful note, and I really appreciate the way that we can view this conversation as it's not just about students in the classroom, it's not just about youth, it's about learning and learners. And when we're thinking about an exponential future where the context changes constantly, all of us need to see ourselves as lifelong learners.
That's what we're doing here today, isn't that it? You're all learning. And what do they want you to do? Talk to each other. See what you learned. What may be something that you picked up, somebody else didn't pick up. I mean, it's all in the communication that we have with each other, and we're all lifelong learners. Graduation is not a celebration of a time when you stop learning. It's a celebration of time when you start learning even more on your own, independently.
And with that mandate, Esther, I will say thank you so much for joining us in conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, Esther Wojcicki.
Thank you very much.